There is a photograph I cannot look at anymore. It is nothing. That is the thing. It is the most ordinary photograph in the world. A man in his 70s in a teal shirt, sunburned across the nose, grinning into his own phone with a canyon opening up behind him, like the whole state of Utah had been arranged for his benefit. He looks wonderful, he looks strong and happy, and about 10 years younger than he was, and you can tell just by looking at it that he was having one of the best mornings of his life. The timestamp on it says 11:04 in the morning. And I have to tell you something about that photograph, and it is going to sound like a line, and it is not a line. It is just the truth, and it is the reason I still think about this one at odd hours. By the time he took that picture, he was already dead. His body simply had not received the message yet. Welcome back to Doomed Departures. What you are about to hear is a composite story. It is built from real heat, real water math, and the real and specific way this high desert kills people who are doing almost everything right. But the man at the center of it is an invention, assembled from every fit, capable, experienced person I have watched walk past the smallest possible mistake on the best day of their trip. No real person is named here. I am going to call him Ray. He was 71, he was a grandfather, he was not reckless, he was not arrogant, he did not fight anybody, he did not ignore a single sign. And that is exactly why I want to tell you about him, because most of the people I talk about on this channel made a decision you would never make. Ray made one you have already made a dozen times. This is Canyonlands in the high desert of southeastern Utah. And I need you to understand what kind of place it is, because it does not look like a killer. It is not a low furnace like Death Valley. It sits up high, it has a breeze, the air is dry and clean, and it feels good in your lungs. And in the morning, it is genuinely pleasant out there. It is also one of the most water-empty landscapes in the country. There are no streams to fill from. There are no springs on the route. There is no snack bar at the halfway point. Whatever water exists out there is water you carried in. And once you are past the trailhead, the desert offers you nothing, forever in every direction. That is the entire deal. It is a beautiful place that has quietly agreed to give you nothing at all. Ray knew that. That is the part people find hard. He was not some tourist who wandered out of a rental car in flip-flops. He had been hiking desert country for 40 years. He had a good pack, he had a hat, he had a plan, and the plan was reasonable, and he had told his wife exactly where he was going and when he would be back. He had done this specific kind of day 100 times in his life, and 100 times it had gone fine. That is not luck, that is competence. Ray was competent. He had 4 grandchildren, and he was the kind of grandfather who actually got down on the floor, which gets harder every year and which he kept doing anyway. He had a shelf of small desert rocks the kids had picked out for him over the years, each one labeled in his handwriting with where it came from. This trip was his. He took it every June alone because there was something in that country he had needed his whole life and had never quite been able to explain to anybody at home. He was not out there to conquer anything. He was out there because it was the place that made him feel most like himself. Ray was also 71 in June, and the desert he had learned in 40 years ago was a cooler desert, and the body he had learned it in was a younger body, and neither of those two facts had ever once written him a letter to let him know. He started at 12 minutes past 8 in the morning. It was 79 degrees. He felt fantastic. Let me put a pin in that, because from here on, I am going to tell you 2 stories at the same time, and they are both true, and they do not agree with each other in a single place. One of them is what Ray felt. The other is what Ray's body was actually doing. And the horror of this entire episode, the thing I need you to carry out of it, is that those 2 stories never once came into contact until it was much, much too late. At the trailhead, there was a spigot. That is a real thing out there. A tap, water, the last water on Earth as far as that trail is concerned. Ray had filled his bottles that morning at the motel. He had a good amount, the amount that had always worked, the amount that a man who has done this 100 times knows is the right amount. And at 10 minutes to 10, an hour and a half into a beautiful morning, he passed that spigot on his way through, and he thought about topping off, and he did not. I want to slow down right there because that is the moment. That is the whole episode, 10 minutes to 10 in the morning. Understand what that moment actually looked like, because it did not look like anything. It was not a decision. It was barely a thought. He was feeling strong. He was ahead of schedule, which felt great. Because being ahead of schedule at 71 is its own quiet joy. His pack was comfortable, and he did not want to stop and unclip it and dig out the bottles and break his rhythm for water he already had enough of. Extra water is heavy, and heavy is slow, and he was not slow today. Today he was flying. He felt good, and he had enough, and he walked past a tap. That was it. That was the fatal error of Ray's entire life. And it took less than 4 seconds, and it did not feel like anything at all. I was there. I want to be honest about that because it is the reason this one sits differently in me than the others. I was at that trailhead that morning, and I saw him. I remember the teal shirt. He said good morning to me, and I said good morning back, and I probably said something about it being a hot one later, because I say that 400 times a summer. He smiled and said he would be off before the worst of it. And he walked past the tap, and I watched him do it, and I did not say one word because there was nothing to say. He looked perfect. He had a good pack and a hat and 40 years in his stride, and there were a dozen people around me that morning who worried me more than he did. Every instinct I have looked straight at the exact moment that killed this man and saw a fit grandfather having a nice day. That is what I cannot get past. The fatal moment was invisible. It was invisible to him, and it was invisible to me, and I am the professional. Here is what his body was doing at 10 minutes to 10. It was already behind. It had been behind since before he ever got out of the car, because he had driven in that morning with the air conditioning on, and he had not been thirsty, and almost nobody in this country starts a hike properly hydrated. It was sweating hard in air so dry that the sweat vanished off his skin before he ever felt wet, so the single gauge his body had for telling him how much he was losing was returning a false reading of comfortable. He was losing well over a liter an hour. He was drinking maybe half of that because he was not thirsty. And thirst in a 71-year-old body is a badly broken instrument, one of the first things age quietly takes and never mentions. The gap was small. It was a fraction of a liter an hour. It was nothing. And it compounded every single hour invisibly while he had the best morning of his trip. He could still have turned it around at 10 minutes to 10. He could have unclipped, topped off, drunk half a liter on the spot, and this would be a story about a nice hike. He could still have turned it around right up until he walked past that tap. By 10:30, he was well down into it, and this is where I have to tell you about the geography, because the geography is what turned a small deficit into a fatal one. Canyonlands, like a lot of this country, is upside down. You do not climb it, you descend into it. And that means you spend the first, easiest, coolest, freshest part of your day walking downhill feeling like a champion, while the actual work of the day silently accumulates above and behind you. Every single step Ray took away from that spigot was a step he was going to have to buy back later, uphill, in the afternoon, in heat that had not even started yet, with water he had already decided not to carry. He felt like he was making great time. His body was taking out a loan. At 11:04, he stopped at an overlook and took a picture of himself. I have looked at that photograph more times than is good for me. he is grinning. There is not one thing wrong in that frame. His posture is good, his color is good, he is standing up straight, he looks exactly like a healthy man having a wonderful day, and I would defy any doctor on earth to look at that image and tell me that man is in trouble. He is not in trouble. He feels magnificent. He is, at that moment, the happiest he has been in months, and the math was already finished. Here is the physiology, and this is the part I need you to actually hear, because it is the difference between this story and every other heat story you have watched. Everybody thinks dehydration works like a fuel gauge. Run low, add water, back to full. It does not work like that, not out here. A human gut can only absorb somewhere in the neighborhood of a liter of water an hour, and that is a hard ceiling, and it does not care how thirsty you are, or how much you drink, or how fast. And a body working hard in serious desert heat can lose considerably more than a liter an hour. So once you are deep enough behind, something happens that almost nobody knows and that kills people every single summer. You physically cannot catch up, not while you are still moving, not while you are still hot. You could sit there with a full jug and drink until you were sick, and you would still be falling further behind every hour, because your body is spending it faster than any gut on earth can take it in. That is what it means to say Ray was already dead at 11:04. It is not poetry. It is arithmetic. Somewhere back at that spigot, the two curves crossed. The water he had left, minus what he would inevitably lose, was no longer enough to fund the climb between him and his truck. From that moment on, no amount of drinking, no amount of discipline, no amount of 40 years of experience was going to close that gap, because the gap was not a matter of will. It was a matter of absorption rate. After 10 minutes to 10, the only thing on this earth that could have saved Ray was another person, not water, not toughness, a rescue. And here is the cruelest thing I know. In order to be rescued, a man has to believe he needs rescuing. And Ray felt fantastic. He felt like the strongest 71-year-old in Utah. The very heat that had already sentenced him was, at that exact moment, hiding the sentence from him, and it would go on hiding it for hours until the only person who could have made the call had lost the ability to understand that a call was needed. He could still have turned it around at 11:04. All he had to do was know. And knowing was the one thing that had already been taken. Let me ask you something, and I am asking as gently as I can, because this one has no villain in it, and I do not want you watching it looking for one. What is the smallest decision you have ever made that turned out to matter enormously and did not feel like anything at all when you made it? Not a big dramatic choice. A tiny one, a thing you did not stop for, a call you did not make, a checkup you skipped because you felt fine. Tell me in the comments, because Ray is not a cautionary tale about a fool. He is a cautionary tale about a competent man who walked past a tap. And the reason this one keeps me up is that I have walked past that tap. So have you? He turned around a little after noon, which was, in his mind, a conservative and sensible decision, and it was, if the morning had been the truth. It was not the truth. The heat was full on now. The rock around him was radiating it back up at him from every direction, the way that country does, so that the temperature at his knees was worse than the temperature on the weather app. And the climb was ahead of him, all of it, every foot he had spent so joyfully on the way down. And this is where the two stories, the one he felt and the one his body was living, finally began to drift close enough to see each other, and it was far too late for the sighting to matter. He felt his pace slip, and he called it heat. He felt his legs go heavy, and he called it his age, and he was a little annoyed about it. He stopped more often and told himself it was smart, that he was being sensible, pacing himself. He drank what he had, and it did nothing, and he did not understand why, because he had never in 40 years of hiking had water fail to work before. Water always worked. Water was the fix. He was doing the fix, and the fix was not fixing anything, and I doubt very much that he ever put that together, because by then his body had started taking the part of him that puts things together. That is what the last stage of this is, not agony, confusion. When the core temperature climbs past what a body can shed, the mind is the first system to be sacrificed, and it goes so gently that the person never notices the loss. Judgment goes. The ability to look at your own situation from the outside and correctly say, I am in danger, I need help, I should stop, that specific and precious ability is not the last thing to go. It is among the first. Which means that by the time Ray's body finally started sending him the message his morning had hidden for 4 hours, the part of him that could have read the message was already gone. They found his truck in the lot that evening. His wife had done everything right, called at exactly the hour she'd been told to call, and we went out fast. And we knew the route because he had told her, and none of it mattered, because we were looking for a man whose fate had been settled at 10 minutes to 10 that morning by 4 seconds of feeling good. We found him partway up. I am not going to describe it because he was somebody's grandfather and not a diagram, and because the details would tell you nothing that the timestamp on that photograph does not already tell you better. It was the heat, it was the water, it was arithmetic that had been finished for hours. His phone was with him. That is how I know about 1104. If this one landed somewhere real for you, then do the small thing that carries it to the next person about to walk past their own tap. Like this video so it reaches somebody in a trailhead parking lot instead of a comment section. Subscribe so you are here for the next one, not for me and not for a number on a screen. Do it so that one more person somewhere stops for the 15 seconds it takes to top off a bottle they are certain they do not need. Here's the whole of it, and it took me a long time to find the words for it. Every other place has the decency to punish you when you make the mistake. You touch the stove, it burns you, now. You skid the car, you feel it, now. The whole way a human being learns anything is that the consequence arrives close enough to the cause that your brain can staple them together. The desert does not do that. The desert bills you later. It separates the cause from the consequence by 4, 5, 6 hours, and it hands you a wonderful morning in between. And by the time the bill arrives, you have completely forgotten the purchase because the purchase did not feel like anything. That is the entire lethality of this place, not the temperature, the delay. Ray was not killed at 4 in the afternoon on a switchback. He was killed at 9:50 in the morning, feeling terrific, walking past a tap he did not need, and then the desert let him go on being alive for 6 more hours as a courtesy. That is why I cannot look at the photograph, because everybody else sees a happy man in a teal shirt on a good day, and I see a man who is already gone standing there grinning with the answer 74 minutes behind him at a spigot. There is no expression on his face. There is no shadow, no premonition, no hint. That is not how it works. It does not announce itself. It never once announces itself. That grin is the most honest thing in this whole story, and it is the most terrifying because it is proof that a person can feel absolutely magnificent and be finished at the same time, and that the feeling and the truth do not check in with each other, ever. His family used that photo at the service. I am told they chose it because it was the last one, and because in it he looked so happy. They are right. He was happy. That is the mercy in this, and it is a real one, and I am not going to take it from them or from you. He never knew. He had a beautiful morning in a beautiful place, and he felt strong and young, and he took a picture to show his grandkids, and he was never afraid, not once, not for a second, not until the part where being afraid was no longer something his mind could do. He could still have turned it around at 9:50 in the morning. That was the last minute of his life in which that sentence was true, and he spent it feeling wonderful. Next time we leave the dry country behind for the cold water, where the bill does not come 6 hours later, where it comes in 90 seconds, and where the fittest person on the boat is so often the first one the river takes. Until then, when you are out somewhere beautiful, feeling strong, ahead of schedule, and you catch yourself walking past the water because you do not need it, understand exactly what you are doing. You are not saving 15 seconds. You are making the only decision that day that will still matter at 4 in the afternoon. Stop, fill the bottle. Feeling fine is not information out here. It is the thing that gets people killed. This has been Doomed Departures. Stay safe, and we will see you on the next one.